The lantern light flickered across her face as she sat alone on the wooden bench outside the town hall, and Walker Preston knew in that instant his carefully ordered life was about to change forever. Wheatland, Wyoming had never seen a social quite like this one. The spring of 1884 had brought an unusual amount of rain, turning the plains green and the spirits of the townsfolk even brighter. The whole community had gathered to celebrate the end of calving season, fiddles and guitars playing inside while couples danced and children ran circles around their parents' legs. But Walker had stepped outside for air, overwhelmed by the heat and noise when he spotted her. She wore a simple blue dress that had seen better days, her dark hair pinned up in a style that suggested she had tried to make herself presentable, but lacked the proper materials, or perhaps the inclination to fuss too much. Her hands were folded in her lap, and she stared out at the dark street with an expression that struck him as both peaceful and profoundly sad. Walker was 32 years old, owner of one of the larger cattle ranches outside town, and generally considered a confirmed bachelor by the local gossips. He had built his spread from nothing over the past decade, working alongside his ranch hands during the day and keeping his own books at night. He had no time for courting, he always said, though the truth was more complicated. The truth was he had never met a woman who made him want to rearrange his priorities, until now. He found himself walking toward her before his mind had fully decided to do so. His boots made hollow sounds on the wooden walkway, and she looked up as he approached. Her eyes were gray in the lamplight, wide and startled like a deer caught in an unexpected clearing. "Evening," he said, removing his hat. "I hope I am not disturbing you." "No," she said quietly. Her voice had a musical quality despite its softness. "I was just getting some air. May I sit?" She hesitated only a moment before nodding. Walker settled onto the bench, leaving a respectable distance between them. Up close, he could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the calluses on her hands that spoke of hard work. She was not a girl but a woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, with a face that was more interesting than beautiful and all the more compelling for it. "Walker Preston," he said, extending his hand. "Deanna Sterling." Her handshake was firm and brief. "I have not seen you in Wheatland before, Miss Sterling. Are you new to the area?" "Arrived 3 days ago on the train from Kansas." She glanced back toward the town hall, where laughter spilled out into the night. "My uncle owns the mercantile. He offered me a position keeping his books and managing the store. I accepted." "That would be Harold Sterling, then. Good man. Honest in his dealings." "Yes, Uncle Harold is kind." Something in her tone suggested that kindness was not something she had experienced much of lately. Walker studied her profile, noting the proud set of her jaw, the way she held herself upright despite clearly wanting to fold in on herself. "May I ask why you are out here instead of inside enjoying the social?" Deanna turned to look at him fully for the first time, and he was struck by the intelligence in her gaze. She was measuring him, he realized, deciding whether he was worth her honesty. "I find I do not dance well with strangers," she said finally, "and I am not yet comfortable here. Everyone inside knows each other, has known each other for years. They have their established friendships and familiar patterns. I am an outsider. I thought it better to observe from a distance tonight." Walker nodded slowly. "I understand that feeling more than you might think. I came here 10 years ago with nothing but a horse and enough money for a down payment on a small piece of land. The established ranchers thought I was a fool. The townspeople did not know what to make of me. It took time to find my place." "And have you found your place?" "In the work, yes. In the community, mostly. But there are still moments when I feel like I am watching from outside, not quite part of the dance even when I am standing in the middle of it." She smiled then, just a small curve of her lips, but it transformed her face entirely. That is exactly it. Like watching through glass. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the music drift out from inside. A waltz was playing, something slow and sweet. Walker found himself wanting to know everything about this woman, to understand the sorrow that clung to her like morning mist on the prairie. "Kansas," he said. "What brought you all the way from there to Wyoming?" Her smile faded. "I was married. My husband was a farmer, a good man who worked hard. 2 years ago, he became ill with pneumonia. He lingered for 3 months before passing. I tried to keep the farm going, but the debts were too substantial and I had no help. Last winter, the bank took everything. My uncle wrote offering me a position here, and I had nowhere else to go. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." She looked down at her hands. "Forgive me, I do not usually speak so plainly about my circumstances to strangers. There is something about tonight, about sitting out here, that loosens the tongue. I am glad for it. Plain speaking is a rarity and a gift." Walker hesitated, then added, "My parents died of cholera when I was 19, lost my younger sister to scarlet fever the same year. I understand something of grief." Diana met his eyes again, and in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, the unspoken acknowledgement that they were both survivors of storms that should have broken them but somehow had not. "Would you like to take a walk?" Walker asked. "The night is fine, and I find I am not ready to return to the crowd just yet." "I would like that very much." They stood together, and Walker offered his arm. After a moment's consideration, Diana took it. They walked slowly down the main street of Wheatland, their footsteps echoing in the quiet. Most of the town was at the social, leaving the street largely deserted. Shop windows reflected the moonlight, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice before falling silent. "Tell me about your ranch," Diana said. "What is it like?" Walker found himself describing the rolling P, as his spread was known, with more enthusiasm than he usually allowed himself. He told her about the 1,000 acres of grazing land, the creek that ran through the property providing reliable water, the small house he had built with his own hands. He described the satisfaction of watching his herd grow each year, the challenge of managing the ranch hands, the simple pleasure of riding out at dawn to check on his cattle. "It sounds wonderful," Diana said. "Peaceful. It can be. It is also back-breaking work, especially during calving season or when we are preparing for the drive to market. But yes, there is peace in it, a sense of purpose. I miss that. On the farm, even when times were hard, there was always the rhythm of the seasons, the cycle of planting and harvest. Working in a store will be different, necessary but different." They had reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open prairie. The moon was nearly full, painting the landscape in shades of silver and shadow. Walker could smell sage on the night air, mixed with the ever-present scent of grass and earth. "May I ask you something?" Diana said. "Of course." "Why did you come outside tonight? You said you needed air, but I suspect there was more to it." Walker smiled. "You are perceptive." "The truth is, I find these socials difficult. People expect me to make conversation, to be sociable, when what I really want is to be back at the ranch. I am not skilled at small talk or dancing. I came because it is expected of me, as one of the more prominent ranchers in the area, but I have been counting the minutes until I could reasonably leave. And then you saw me, and decided to make conversation anyway." There was amusement in her voice now. "With you, it does not feel like small talk." They turned and began walking back toward town. Diana's hand rested lightly on his arm, and Walker found himself intensely aware of that small contact, the warmth of her touch through the fabric of his shirt. "I should return before my uncle begins to worry," Deanna said as they approached the town hall again. "He will want to introduce me to more people, though I confess I have already forgotten most of the names from earlier. Then perhaps you would allow me to call on you." The words came out before Walker could second-guess them. "I could show you more of the area, help you become familiar with Wheatland." Deanna stopped walking and turned to face him. In the lamplight, her expression was uncertain but not, he was relieved to see, unwilling. "I would need to ask my uncle's permission, of course. I am living in his house and working in his store. I do not want to do anything that might jeopardize that arrangement. Of course, I could speak with Harold myself if that would be appropriate. Let me speak with him first." "If he has no objection, then yes, Mr. Preston, you may call on me. Walker, please. Walker." She tested his name, and he liked the sound of it in her voice. "And you should call me Deanna." They stood there for a moment longer, neither quite willing to break the spell of the evening. Finally, Deanna stepped back. "Thank you for the conversation and the walk. It has been the most pleasant evening I have had in a very long time." "For me as well. Good night, Deanna. Good night." He watched her walk back into the town hall, her blue dress disappearing into the crowd. Then he turned and headed for his horse, tied up at the hitching post down the street. As he rode back to the ranch under the wide Wyoming sky, Walker found himself smiling. He had gone to that social expecting nothing but obligation and boredom. He was returning home with something he had not felt in years: hope. The following days found Walker in an unusual state of distraction. His foreman, a grizzled former cavalryman named Tom Mitchell, noticed immediately. "Boss, you have checked that fence line twice already this morning," Tom said, riding up alongside Walker as they surveyed the eastern pasture. "And you have been staring off into space for the better part of an hour. Something on your mind?" Walker shifted in his saddle. "Just thinking about some business in town." Tom raised an eyebrow. "That's so. Would not have anything to do with Harold Sterling's niece, would it? Word travels fast in a small town. Heard you were seen talking with her at the social." "We had a conversation, that is all." "Uh-huh." Tom grinned, showing the gap where he had lost a tooth years ago in a bar fight. "Been working for you 8 years now, boss, and I have never seen you interested in any woman. This one must be something special." Walker could not help but smile. "She is, though I barely know her yet." "Well, do not wait too long to do something about it. Woman like that, alone in a new town, she will not stay unattached for long. Already heard that Timothy Walsh's boy is planning to court her." That news sent an unexpected jolt through Walker's chest. Jeremy Walsh was 25, good-looking in a polished way, and heir to his father's considerable ranch holdings. He was everything Walker was not: smooth-talking, comfortable in social situations, the kind of man women usually preferred. "I plan to call on her this Sunday," Walker said firmly. "Assuming Harold Sterling gives his permission. Then you better get yourself into town before then and have that conversation. Saturday is just 2 days away." Tom was right, of course. Walker finished his work quickly that afternoon and rode into Wheatland just before the mercantile closed for the evening. The store was a substantial 2-story building on Main Street, with living quarters on the upper floor where Harold and now Deanna resided. The bell above the door chimed as Walker entered. The mercantile smelled of coffee, leather, and the indefinable scent of dry goods. Shelves lined the walls, packed with everything from canned foods to farming equipment. Deanna stood behind the counter, helping an older woman with a purchase. She looked up as the bell rang, and her eyes widened slightly when she saw Walker. He waited patiently while she finished with her customer, using the time to observe her. She moved efficiently behind the counter, clearly already familiar with where things were kept. She smiled as she wrapped the woman's purchases, said something that made the customer laugh. She was good at this, Walker realized. Good with people despite her shyness at the social. When the woman left, Deanna came around the counter to greet him. "Walker, I did not expect to see you so soon. I wanted to speak with your uncle if he is available, and I wanted to see you," he added honestly. A faint blush colored her cheeks. "Uncle Harold is in the back room going over invoices. I will get him." Harold Sterling emerged a moment later, a ledger still in his hand. He was a man in his late 50s, with silver hair and the slight stoop of someone who spent too many hours bent over paperwork. But his handshake was firm and his eyes were shrewd as he looked Walker over. "Walker Preston. Good to see you. Deanna said you two met at the social." "We did, sir. I was hoping I might have permission to call on her. Take her riding this Sunday, show her some of the countryside." Harold glanced at Deanna, who had busied herself straightening a display of fabric bolts but was clearly listening. "My niece is a grown woman, nearly 26 years old and widowed besides. She does not need my permission for anything. But as she is living under my roof and new to the area, I appreciate you asking. What do you say, Deanna? Do you want to go riding with Mr. Preston?" Deanna turned, her hand still holding a bolt of calico. "I would if it would not interfere with my work here. Sunday we are closed anyway. Go, enjoy yourself. You have barely left this building since you arrived." Harold looked back at Walker. "I will tell you plainly, Preston. My niece has been through a hard time. She deserves kindness and respect. I trust you are a man who can provide both." "I am, sir. You have my word." "Then we have an understanding. Deanna, show the man out. I need to finish these invoices before supper." Harold disappeared back into the office, leaving Walker and Deanna alone in the store. Evening light slanted through the windows, turning everything golden. "Sunday, then," Deanna said softly. "What time?" "After church services, if you attend. I could pick you up around 1 in the afternoon." "I do attend. The Methodist church with my uncle. 1 o'clock would be perfect." Walker nodded, suddenly feeling like a nervous boy instead of a man who had built a successful ranch through sheer determination. "I should go. Let you close up for the evening." "Walker," Deanna stepped closer. "I am glad you came. I have been hoping you would." The admission clearly cost her something. Walker could see the vulnerability in her expression, the fear that she had revealed too much. He reached out and gently took her hand, holding it for just a moment. "So have I. I have thought of little else since the social." Her smile was like sunrise. "Until Sunday, then." "Until Sunday." Walker left the mercantile feeling like he was walking on air. The ride back to the ranch seemed shorter than usual, the evening more beautiful. He found himself whistling as he unsaddled his horse, something Tom Mitchell definitely noticed but, mercifully, did not comment on. The next 2 days crawled by with agonizing slowness. Walker threw himself into work, helping his men repair fences, checking on the cattle, breaking a new horse that had proven stubborn. But his mind kept drifting to Sunday, to Deanna, to the possibility of what might develop between them. Sunday morning dawned clear and warm, perfect weather for a ride. Walker attended the Baptist church as he usually did, sitting in his customary pew near the back. But his attention kept wandering to thoughts of the afternoon ahead. After the service, he rode back to the ranch and changed into his better clothes clean trousers, a pressed shirt, a vest that was nearly new. He felt ridiculous fussing over his appearance like this, but he could not seem to help himself. At precisely 1 o'clock, he arrived at the mercantile. Deanna was waiting outside, dressed in a practical riding skirt and a simple white blouse. Her hair was in a long braid down her back, and she had a bonnet in her hand. "I should warn you," she said as he helped her mount the gentle mare he had brought for her. "I have not ridden in over a year." I may be terribly out of practice. This is Daisy. She is the sweetest-tempered horse on my ranch. She will take good care of you." They rode out of town at an easy pace, heading west toward the Laramie Mountains in the distance. The prairie stretched around them in every direction, an ocean of grass dotted with wildflowers. The sky was impossibly blue, unmarred by even a single cloud. "It is so open here," Deanna said, looking around with wonder. "In Kansas we had trees, breaks in the landscape. Here you can see forever." "Does it bother you? Some people find it unsettling." "No, I think I love it. It feels like freedom." They rode for an hour, talking easily about everything and nothing. Deanna told him about her childhood in Ohio. Her family's moved to Kansas when she was 12. Her courtship and marriage to Robert Sterling at age 22. She spoke of him with affection but without the sharp edge of fresh grief. And Walker understood that she had done her mourning and was ready to move forward with her life. In turn, he told her about growing up in Colorado, losing his family, drifting for a while before finding his way to Wyoming. He described the early years of building his ranch, living in a one-room shack, working from dawn to dusk. He spoke of the satisfaction of watching something grow from nothing, of creating a legacy even if there was currently no one to leave it to. "Why did you never marry?" Deanna asked. They had stopped near a creek to let the horses drink, and were sitting on a fallen log in the shade of a cottonwood tree. Walker considered the question. "I suppose I never met the right woman. The few available ladies in these parts seemed to want something I could not give them: constant attention, pretty words, a life of ease. Ranch life is hard. It requires a partner who can work alongside you, who understands that there will be lean times and difficult seasons. I never found anyone who fit that description. Until, perhaps now." Deanna looked at him, her gray eyes serious. "You barely know me, Walker." "That is true, but I know some things. I know you are honest and hardworking. I know you have survived loss and hardship without becoming bitter. I know that when I am with you, I feel more like myself than I have in years. The rest, I hope, we can learn together, if you are willing." She was quiet for a long moment, watching the water ripple over stones in the creek bed. "I never thought I would want this again. After Robert died, after I lost the farm, I told myself I was done with hoping for anything beyond survival. Coming here was meant to be a fresh start, but only in the practical sense. I was not looking for love. And now I find myself hoping again, despite my better judgment." She turned to face him fully. "But I need you to understand something. I will not be a burden to anyone ever again. I have my position at the Mercantile and I intend to keep it. I need to be able to support myself, to have my own security. If this continues, you need to know that I will not simply become a dependent wife. I would not want you to. Deanna, I am not looking for someone to cook my meals and mend my shirts, though those things are necessary. I am looking for a partner. Someone who can stand beside me, who has her own strength and purpose. What you are describing is exactly what I need." Relief washed over her face, followed by a tentative joy that made his heart ache. "Then yes, I am willing to see where this leads. Though I warn you, I am probably going to be difficult about it. I have grown accustomed to making my own decisions." Walker laughed. "I would expect nothing less." They rode back to town as the afternoon stretched into early evening, arriving just as the sun was beginning to lower toward the horizon. Walker helped Deanna down from her horse, and they stood for a moment in front of the Mercantile, neither wanting the day to end. "May I see you again?" Walker asked. "Perhaps next Saturday we could have supper at the hotel restaurant. I would like that. And during the week I could come by the store sometimes, make up excuses about needing supplies." Deanna smiled. "I think I would see through that fairly quickly, probably." but I am going to do it anyway." She laughed then, a genuine sound of happiness that made something in Walker's chest expand. On impulse, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair that had come loose from her braid behind her ear. The gesture was intimate, more than he had allowed himself before, but Deanna did not pull away. "Thank you for today," she said softly. "It has been perfect. For me as well. Good night, Diana, good night." He waited until she had gone inside before mounting his horse and heading home. The ride back to the ranch seemed to take no time at all, his mind too full of Deanna to notice the passing miles. Tom Mitchell was waiting for him in the barn, ostensibly checking on one of the horses, but clearly just wanting to hear how the day had gone. "That good, huh?" Tom said, seeing Walker's expression. "Better. Tom, I think I am going to marry that woman." After one ride, after one conversation, honestly, the ride just confirmed it. Tom shook his head, grinning. "Well, I will be damned. Never thought I would see the day. She must really be something special." "She is." The following weeks fell into a pattern that felt both new and as comfortable as if they had been doing it for years. Walker found excuses to come into town several times a week, stopping at the mercantile to purchase items he did not really need. Deanna saw through his pretense immediately, but never called him on it, instead greeting him with a smile that made the 30-minute ride worthwhile. They took rides together every Sunday after church, exploring more of the countryside around Wheatland. Deanna's riding improved quickly, and soon they were able to venture farther afield. Walker showed her his favorite spots, a ridge overlooking his ranch where you could see for miles, a hidden valley full of wildflowers, a swimming hole where the creek widened and deepened. In town, they were beginning to be seen as a couple. The gossips had much to say about it, of course. Some thought it was too soon after Deanna's widowhood, though she had been alone for 2 years now. Others thought Walker was moving too fast, that he would scare her off. But most of the townsfolk seemed pleased. Harold Sterling certainly was, frequently telling Walker that he had never seen his niece so happy. 6 weeks after the social, Walker invited Diana to visit the ranch. She came on a Sunday, and he gave her a tour of the entire operation. She asked intelligent questions about his methods, his breeding program, his business practices. She met Tom Mitchell and the other hands, who all made themselves scarce after the introductions, recognizing that the boss wanted time alone with his lady. They ended up on the porch of Walker's house, sitting in the 2 chairs he had built years ago but rarely used. The house was small but solidly constructed, with 2 bedrooms, a main room and a kitchen. It was clean and functional, but lacked any sort of decoration or comfort beyond the basic necessities. "It needs a woman's touch," Deanna said, looking through the door at the sparse interior. "You have built something wonderful here, Walker, but it does not look like a home. It looks like a place where someone sleeps between work days." That is all it has been, honestly. I never saw the point in making it more when it was just me. And now I think I would like it to be more. I think I would like it to be a home. He turned to face her. "Deanna, I know this is fast. I know we have known each other less than 2 months. But I am 32 years old, and I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. I am not a man who plays games or believes in long, drawn-out courtships. I know what I want." Deanna's hands were folded in her lap, and he could see she was trembling slightly. "What do you want, Walker?" "I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you here. I want children and years and everything that comes with making a family together. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to face whatever comes, good times and hard times, knowing that we are facing it together." Tears were streaming down her face now, though she was smiling. "I want those things too. I want them so much it terrifies me." "Then say yes." What if I cannot have children? I was married for 3 years and we never conceived. What if that is not possible for me? Then we will love each other and build our life together anyway. Children would be a blessing, but you are what I need. Everything else is secondary. She stood abruptly and walked to the edge of the porch, looking out at the rolling land that spread before them. Walker waited, his heart pounding, knowing that this moment was crucial and that he could not rush her. Finally, she turned back to him. I lost everything once. My husband, my home, my sense of security. The idea of risking that again, of letting myself hope and love and depend on someone, it is the most frightening thing I can imagine. I understand that. I do. But, she continued, the idea of not taking this risk, of walking away from what we could have together because of fear, that is even more frightening. So yes, Walker Preston. Yes, I will marry you. He was on his feet and across the porch in an instant, pulling her into his arms. She came willingly, wrapping her arms around his neck as he lifted her off her feet and spun her around. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her for the first time. It was a gentle kiss, tentative and sweet, but it held the promise of everything to come. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. I do not have a ring, Walker said. I should have planned this better, should have gone to the jeweler in Cheyenne. I do not need a ring right now. We can get one later. All I need is you. They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans. Deanna wanted a small wedding, just close friends and family. Walker agreed immediately, never having been one for big productions. They decided on a date 6 weeks away, which would give Deanna time to make a dress and handle the arrangements. She would continue working at the mercantile until the wedding, then move out to the ranch. Uncle Harold will need to hire someone else, Deanna said. I feel badly about that, leaving him short-handed. He will understand, and he will be happy for you, for us. When Walker took Deanna back to town that evening, they stopped at the mercantile to tell Harold the news. The older man's face split into a huge smile, and he pulled Deanna into a bear hug before shaking Walker's hand vigorously. I could not be more pleased, Harold said. Deanna, your Aunt Martha would have loved this. She always said you deserved to be happy again. I wish she could be here, Deanna said quietly. Her aunt had died the previous year, one of the reasons Harold had reached out to his niece. She would have adored Walker. Would have seen immediately what a good man he is. They shared supper with Harold that night, celebrating with a bottle of wine he had been saving for a special occasion. Walker left late, riding home under a canopy of stars, his heart fuller than he could ever remember it being. The next 6 weeks were a flurry of activity. Deanna worked on her dress in the evenings, a simple but elegant creation of cream-colored silk that Harold had ordered specially for her. Walker made improvements to the house, adding small touches he hoped would make Deanna feel welcome: new curtains, a rug for the main room, a mirror for the bedroom. He bought furniture in Cheyenne, a proper dining table and chairs, a comfortable sofa, things that would make the house feel complete. Tom Mitchell and the other ranch hands pitched in to help, clearly excited about having a woman on the ranch. They repainted the exterior of the house, fixed a loose step on the porch, and even planted a small garden on the south side where Deanna could grow vegetables and flowers. The boys are looking forward to better meals, Tom told Walker one afternoon as they worked on building a chicken coop. No offense, boss, but your cooking is terrible. None taken. It is terrible. Deanna is a good cook, though. She has been bringing me things from the mercantile to try: pies, bread, stew. Everything is delicious. Well, we are all glad to have her joining us, and glad to see you so happy. Been a long time coming. The wedding took place on a Saturday in June, in the Methodist church, where Deanna and Harold attended services. The ceremony was small, just as Deanna had wanted Harold and a few of his friends, Tom Mitchell and the ranch hands, some of the people Deanna had become friendly with during her months in Wheatland. The minister was a kind man who kept the service brief but meaningful. Deanna walked down the aisle on Harold's arm, looking more beautiful than Walker had ever seen her. The cream silk dress fit her perfectly, and she had woven wildflowers into her hair. But it was her expression that made his breath catch pure joy, uncomplicated and radiant. They exchanged vows in steady voices, slipped simple gold bands onto each other's fingers, and sealed their marriage with a kiss that made the small congregation applaud. Afterward, there was a reception at the hotel restaurant, with food and dancing and toasts to the couple's happiness. Late in the afternoon, Walker and Deanna left the celebration and rode out to the ranch together. Deanna sat in front of Walker on his horse, her arms around his waist, her head resting against his chest. It was a perfect June evening, warm and clear, with the scent of sage and grass on the breeze. When they arrived at the ranch, Walker dismounted first and then reached up to help Deanna down. But instead of setting her on her feet, he lifted her into his arms and carried her up the porch steps and across the threshold of their home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Preston," he said, and the words felt like the most significant he had ever spoken. "Welcome home to you too," Deanna replied softly. He set her down gently, and they stood in the main room of the house, alone together for the first time as husband and wife. The sun was setting, filling the room with golden light. Through the windows, they could see the land stretching away in every direction, endless and full of promise. Walker pulled Deanna close, and she came willingly, fitting against him as if she had been made for precisely that purpose. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought I would be again. You have given me everything, Walker, a home, a future, a reason to hope. You have given me the same, more than you know." They made love for the first time that night in the bedroom Walker had prepared for them, tender and careful with each other, learning the language of each other's bodies. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the big bed, talking quietly as the night deepened around them. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," Deanna admitted. "For this happiness to be taken away somehow, it feels too perfect to last." "Nothing is perfect," Walker said. "We will have hard times. The ranch will have bad years. We will argue and disagree, but we will face all of it together." "That is what marriage is, Deanna. Not avoiding the storms, but weathering them side by side." "I like that. Weathering them side by side." She fell asleep in his arms, her breathing deep and even completely trusting. Walker lay awake a while longer, watching the moonlight paint patterns on the ceiling, feeling more content than he had ever imagined possible. He had built a successful ranch, created something of value with his own hands and will. But this woman sleeping beside him, this partnership they were beginning, this was the real achievement of his life. The first year of their marriage was an adjustment for both of them, but a joyful one. Deanna threw herself into making the house a home, adding touches everywhere: embroidered pillows, photographs in frames, her mother's china displayed on shelves Walker built for her. She planted an extensive garden that flourished under her care, providing fresh vegetables all summer. She took over the cooking, much to the delight of the ranch hands, and instituted a tradition of Sunday dinners where everyone ate together. But she was not content to simply manage the household. Deanna had a quick mind for business, and she began helping Walker with the ranch accounts. She reorganized his record-keeping system, found ways to reduce unnecessary expenses, and even suggested some new breeding strategies that proved successful. Walker had thought he wanted a partner, but he had not realized how much more effective he could be with Deanna working alongside him. They fell into a rhythm, rising early together, working hard during the day and spending their evenings on the porch or in their comfortable main room, talking about everything and nothing. They rode out together on Sundays, just as they had during their courtship, exploring more of the vast Wyoming landscape. At night, they came together with a passion that never seemed to diminish, finding in each other a perfect complement. Deanna blossomed under Walker's steady love and attention, becoming more confident and open. Walker, in turn, found himself softening in ways he had not thought possible, allowing himself to be vulnerable, to need someone, to accept help and support. As autumn approached, Deanna began to suspect something that filled her with equal parts hope and fear. Her monthly courses had stopped, and she found herself tired in a way that felt different from simple, hard work. She was nauseated in the mornings, though it passed quickly. She said nothing at first, afraid to raise Walker's hopes or her own, but eventually the signs were unmistakable. She told him one evening as they sat together after supper. Walker had been reading a livestock journal while Deanna worked on a quilt, a companionable silence between them. She set down her needle and thread, took a deep breath, and spoke. "Walker, I think I am going to have a baby." He looked up from his journal, his expression stunned. "You think? You are not certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor. All the signs are there." "I am about 2 months along, I believe." Walker set down his journal very carefully, as if afraid sudden movement might somehow change this reality. "When I said children were not necessary, I meant it." "But Diana, if this is true, if we are really going to be parents," his voice broke, and she saw tears in his eyes for the first time since she had known him. "Come here," she said, and he crossed to her immediately, kneeling beside her chair. She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "In about 7 months, we are going to meet our child. Are you ready for that?" "I am so ready. God, Deanna, I did not know I could want something this much." They held each other, both crying now, overwhelmed by the enormity of this new development. After years of believing it might not happen, after Deanna's first marriage had remained childless, they were going to be parents. The next day, Deanna went to see the doctor in Wheatland, an older man named Thomas Gregory who had been practicing medicine in the area for decades. He confirmed what she already knew: she was pregnant, healthy, and could expect to deliver in late April. The pregnancy was not easy. Deanna suffered from significant nausea in the first few months and fatigue that made even simple tasks exhausting. But she refused to slow down completely, continuing to manage the household and help Walker with the books. He worried constantly, trying to get her to rest more, and they had their first real arguments about her stubbornness. "You need to take care of yourself," Walker insisted one evening after finding her in the garden, weeding despite the cold November rain. "I am taking care of myself. I am not an invalid, Walker. I am pregnant. Women have been doing this since the beginning of time while also working and managing their lives. But you do not have to push yourself so hard. We have people who can help. Tom's wife could take over some of the household duties. You could rest." "I do not want to rest all the time. I will go mad with nothing to do. I need to be useful, to have purpose." They went around and around about it, neither willing to give ground completely, until finally they reached a compromise. Deanna would continue her normal activities, but would agree to rest for 2 hours every afternoon and would not overexert herself. Walker would stop hovering quite so much, but would help more with the household tasks, so Deanna did not have to do everything. As winter set in and Diana's pregnancy became obvious, she found herself receiving constant advice from the women in town. Everyone had an opinion about what she should eat, how she should move, what she should or should not do. Some of it was helpful, much of it was contradictory. Deanna learned to smile and nod, and then do whatever felt right to her. The winter was hard that year, with more snow than usual and temperatures that plunged well below zero. The ranch work was brutal, caring for the cattle in the harsh conditions, breaking ice on the water troughs every morning, ensuring the horses were adequately sheltered. Walker and his men worked from dawn to dusk, coming home exhausted and frozen. Diana did her best to make the house a warm refuge. She kept the fires burning, had hot meals ready, and maintained an atmosphere of calm and comfort. But she worried constantly about Walker out in the bitter cold, and she felt frustrated by her own physical limitations as her pregnancy progressed. By February, she was quite large, moving slowly and awkwardly. The baby was active, kicking and rolling constantly. Walker loved to feel the movement, placing his hands on her stomach and marveling at the life growing inside her. They talked about names, debating back and forth. Diana wanted something strong and simple. Walker agreed but could not settle on anything that felt right. "We will know when we meet him or her," Diana said finally. "The right name will become obvious. What if it does not? What if we end up calling our child baby for months because we cannot decide?" Diana laughed. "Then we will be terrible parents right from the start, and our child will be scarred for life." That is not reassuring. But despite his joking, Walker was nervous about becoming a father. Late at night, when Diana could not sleep because the baby was kicking too vigorously or her back ached, they would talk about their fears. Walker worried he would not know how to be a good father, having lost his own father so young. Diana worried about the delivery itself, about whether she would be strong enough, whether everything would be all right. "We will figure it out together," became their mantra, repeated whenever doubt crept in. As March arrived and the weather began to slowly warm, Diana entered her final months of pregnancy. Dr. Gregory visited the ranch several times to check on her, pronouncing her healthy despite her discomfort. He warned them that first babies often came late and to be prepared for a wait. But their baby had other plans. On a mild evening in mid-April, 3 weeks before the due date Dr. Gregory had calculated, Diana's water broke as she and Walker were preparing for bed. "Oh," she said, looking down at the puddle spreading across the floor. "Oh my goodness." "Is that you?" Walker was white-faced, suddenly panicked. "It is time. We need to get Dr. Gregory and we need to get some things ready. I have a list in the drawer of items we will need. Walker, look at me." She took his face in her hands. "Take a breath. Everything is going to be fine. You are supposed to be the one panicking. I am supposed to be calm. Neither of us is very good at doing what we are supposed to do, apparently. Now go. Ride quickly but safely. Bring the doctor back. I will be fine until you return." Walker went, after first helping Diana into their bed and ensuring she had water and everything she might need within reach. The ride to town took 20 minutes that felt like hours. He pounded on Dr. Gregory's door until the man appeared, irritable at being woken but quickly alert when Walker explained the situation. They rode back to the ranch together, Dr. Gregory with his medical bag secured behind his saddle. When they arrived, they found Diana still in bed but clearly in pain, breathing through contractions. Tom Mitchell's wife, Sarah, had arrived at some point, summoned by one of the hands who had heard the commotion. "Oh, thank goodness," Sarah said when she saw the doctor. "She is doing well, but the pains are coming regularly now." Dr. Gregory examined Diana and nodded with satisfaction. "You are progressing normally. First babies usually take their time, so I expect we have several hours ahead of us. Mr. Preston, you should prepare yourself for a long night." It was indeed a long night. Diana labored steadily, her contractions growing stronger and closer together as the hours passed. Walker stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand. wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, offering words of encouragement even as he felt increasingly helpless in the face of her pain. "I am sorry," he said at one point when she was gripping his hand hard enough to hurt, her face contorted with effort. "I am so sorry you have to go through this." "Do not apologize," she gasped. "This is how we get our baby. It will be worth it." Dawn was breaking when Dr. Gregory finally said, "All right, Deanna, with the next contraction, I need you to push. Your baby is ready to be born." What followed was the most intense, primal, frightening, and ultimately miraculous experience of Walker's life. He watched his wife summon reserves of strength he had not known she possessed, bearing down again and again, her face red with effort. He felt useless and awed and terrified all at once. And then, as the rising sun painted the windows gold, a baby's cry filled the room. Strong, angry, perfect. "You have a son," Dr. Gregory announced, holding up the squalling infant. "A healthy, good-sized boy." Diana was crying and laughing at the same time, reaching for the baby even as Dr. Gregory worked to cut the cord and wrap the child in a blanket. Then their son was placed in Diana's arms, and everything else in the world fell away. Walker looked down at his wife and child, at this family they had created, and felt emotion so overwhelming he thought he might collapse under the weight of it. The baby had stopped crying and was looking up at Diana with unfocused dark blue eyes. He had a shock of black hair and tiny, perfect features. "Hello, little one," Diana whispered. "Hello, my sweet boy. We have been waiting for you." "He is perfect," Walker managed to say around the lump in his throat. "Diana, you did it. You were incredible." "We did it," she corrected, looking up at him with exhausted joy. "We made him together, Walker, our son." "Our son," he repeated, and the words felt sacred. Dr. Gregory finished attending to Deanna, pronouncing her healthy despite her exhaustion, and left them alone with their new baby. Sarah departed as well, promising to return later with food. Tom spread the word among the ranch hands, and soon there were shouts of congratulation and celebration outside. But inside the bedroom, it was just the three of them. Walker carefully took the baby when Diana's arms grew tired, holding his son for the first time. The infant was so small, so fragile seeming, yet he had a grip like iron when Walker's finger brushed his tiny hand. "What should we name him?" Deanna asked. "What feels right?" Walker studied his son's face, this new person who would carry forward their legacy, their hopes, their love. "William," he said suddenly. "William Robert Preston. William for strength, Robert after your first husband. He was a good man and he was part of your story. I want our son to carry that with him." Diana's eyes filled with tears. "That is perfect. Thank you for honoring Robert that way. It means more than I can say." She paused, then added, "William Walker Preston. He should have your name as well." "Deanna, you do not have to, I want to. William Walker Robert Preston. We will call him Will." So Will it was. The baby slept, woke, nursed, and slept again, beginning the cycle that would define their lives for the foreseeable future. Diana recovered quickly, her body resilient despite the ordeal. Within a few days, she was up and moving, though Walker insisted she stay close to bed for at least 2 weeks. Becoming parents changed everything and nothing. The core of their relationship remained strong, but their daily life transformed completely. Will was a demanding baby, wanting to nurse frequently and not sleeping for more than a few hours at a stretch. Deanna was exhausted but radiant with happiness. Walker tried to help where he could, taking the baby so Deanna could rest, walking Will around the house in the middle of the night when he fussed. The ranch work continued, of course. Cattle did not care that the boss had just become a father. But Tom and the other hands pitched in more, allowing Walker to spend extra time in the house with his family. They all doted on baby Will, and it became common for one ranch hand or another to stop by the house just to peek at the baby and receive a cup of Deanna's coffee. As the spring turned to summer, they fell into a new rhythm. Deanna managed to balance motherhood with her other responsibilities, though she gave up helping with the books for a while, too tired to focus on numbers. Will grew rapidly, becoming more alert and responsive. His eyes changed from blue to green, and his hair remained dark. He was a happy baby for the most part, content as long as he was fed and someone was holding him. On their first wedding anniversary, Walker surprised Deanna with a trip to Cheyenne. They left Will with Sarah Mitchell for the day, the first time Deanna had been separated from him for more than an hour. It was both liberating and anxiety-inducing. "I feel like I have forgotten something crucial," Deanna said as they boarded the train. "Like I am missing an essential part of myself." "I know what you mean. But Sarah raised 4 children. Will is in good hands, and we deserve a day to just be husband and wife, not parents." In Cheyenne, they had lunch at a fine restaurant, went shopping, and simply enjoyed being together without the constant demands of an infant. Walker bought Deanna a beautiful necklace, a delicate silver chain with a pendant shaped like a wildflower. Deanna bought Walker a new hat, his old one having become battered beyond salvation. But by late afternoon, they both were anxious to return home. They caught the evening train back to Wheatland and drove quickly out to the ranch. Will was fine, of course, having barely noticed their absence. But Deanna swept him up and held him close, breathing in his baby smell, and Walker felt his world click back into proper alignment. "We have become those parents," Deanna said, laughing at themselves, "the ones who cannot stand to be away from their child for even a day. Is that a bad thing? No, I think it is exactly right." The years began to pass with surprising speed. Will grew from infant to toddler, learning to walk and then run, getting into everything, keeping them constantly on their toes. He was a bright child, curious about everything, talking early and constantly. He loved the ranch, loved the horses and cattle, loved following Walker around and trying to help with the work. When Will was 3, Deanna discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect, perhaps because she was less anxious. Their second child, a daughter they named Emma Grace, was born on a snowy January evening in 1888. She was smaller than Will had been, with Deanna's gray eyes and a temperament that was pure sweetness from the start. Will was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help care for her, bringing her his favorite toys. Deanna and Walker watched their children together, marveling at the family they had created. The house that had once been spare and empty now echoed with laughter and crying, with the chaos and joy of children. The ranch continued to prosper. Walker's careful breeding program and Deanna's business acumen combined to make the Rolling P one of the most successful operations in the region. They expanded their holdings, buying adjacent land when it became available, increasing their herd size. They hired more help, built a new barn, made improvements to the house as the family outgrew the original small structure. But success brought its own challenges. A drought in 1889 tested them severely, forcing difficult decisions about which cattle to keep and which to sell. A brutal winter the following year killed some of their livestock and strained their finances. Through it all, Walker and Deanna supported each other, their partnership proving as strong as they had hoped it would be. When Will was 6 and Emma 3, Deanna told Walker she was pregnant once more. This pregnancy was harder, Deanna now in her mid-30s, and finding the physical demands more taxing. But their third child, a boy they named Thomas Harold Preston after Tom Mitchell and Deanna's uncle, arrived healthy and strong in the spring of 1891. With 3 children, the house was in constant motion. Deanna hired a woman from town, a widow named Mrs. Patterson, to help with the household work and child minding. This freed Deanna to once again become more involved with the ranch business and to have some time for herself. She began writing letters to agricultural journals, sharing ideas about ranch management. Some of her letters were published, bringing attention to the rolling P and to Diana's innovative thinking. Walker could not have been prouder. The shy woman he had met at the town's social years ago had blossomed into someone confident and accomplished. She was a full partner in every sense, contributing as much to their success as he did. Uncle Harold died peacefully in his sleep in 1893, leaving Diana the mercantile in his will. They discussed what to do with it at length. Deanna did not want to give up her involvement with the ranch to run a store in town. In the end, they decided to sell the business to a young couple looking to establish themselves in Wheatland, using the money to fund further expansion of the ranch. As the children grew older, they each developed distinct personalities. Will was serious and hardworking like his father, already talking about running the ranch someday. Emma was creative and gentle, preferring to help her mother in the garden or with cooking rather than working with the animals. Thomas, the baby, was adventurous and mischievous, constantly getting into trouble and making everyone laugh. Walker and Diana's relationship continued to deepen over the years. They had their disagreements, certainly. Deanna thought Walker was too indulgent with the children sometimes. Walker thought Deanna pushed herself too hard, still trying to do everything herself. But they had learned how to argue productively, how to listen to each other, how to compromise, and the love between them never faded. If anything, it grew stronger. Walker still found himself watching Deanna sometimes, struck by the reality that this remarkable woman had chosen to build a life with him. Deanna would catch his eye across the dinner table, with 3 children chattering around them, and smile in a way that said she was thinking the exact same thing. By the time their 20th wedding anniversary approached in 1904, Walker and Deanna had built something extraordinary. The Rolling P was one of the most successful ranches in Wyoming, spanning thousands of acres with a herd of several thousand head of cattle. They employed a dozen ranch hands year-round, more during busy seasons. The original small house had been expanded into a spacious, comfortable home that could accommodate their family and frequent guests. Will was 19 now, already managing much of the day-to-day ranch operations and courting a young woman from a neighboring ranch. Emma, at 16, was teaching at the small school in Wheatland and writing poetry in her spare time. Thomas, at 13, was still trying to decide what he wanted to do with his life, but was leaning toward studying veterinary medicine. Walker, at 52, had some gray in his hair and lines around his eyes, but he was still strong and vital. Diana, at 46, was as beautiful as the day he had first seen her sitting alone at that long-ago social, though now her beauty was enriched by experience and confidence. For their anniversary, they decided to recreate their first date. They left the children with Mrs. Patterson, who still worked for them after all these years, and rode out to the spot near the creek where Walker had first told Deanna he wanted to marry her. It was a perfect June day, warm and clear, just like that day 20 years ago. They dismounted and sat on the same fallen log, now weathered and worn but still sturdy enough to hold them. 20 years, Deanna said, shaking her head. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like it just happened yesterday. You have any regrets? Walker asked. Not a single one. You have given me everything I could have hoped for and so much more. A home, children, a partnership that challenges and fulfills me, and love, so much love. She turned to look at him. What about you? Regrets? only that I did not find you sooner, that we did not have more time together. We still have plenty of time. My mother lived to be 80. Your grandmother was 92. We could have decades still ahead of us. Then I want to spend every moment of those decades with you, just like we have spent the past 20 years. Building, growing, loving each other and our family. That sounds perfect to me. They kissed, a long, sweet kiss that held 2 decades of shared life, of challenges overcome and joys celebrated. When they pulled apart, Deanna rested her head on Walker's shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the creek babble over stones, the wind rustle through the cottonwood leaves, the distant sounds of cattle and birdsong. You ever think about that night at the social? Deanna asked. What made you come talk to me? I've thought about it many times. Honestly, I was drawn to you. Something about the way you sat there, alone but not lonely, observing everything. You seemed different from anyone else I had met. I had to know who you were. I am so glad you did. I almost did not go that night, did you know that? Uncle Harold insisted, said I needed to meet people. I was planning to stay for an hour and then slip away. And then you sat down beside me, and everything changed. One conversation led to a lifetime together, Walker said. Best conversation I ever had. Mine too. They stayed there for hours, talking about the past and the future, about their children and their dreams for the ranch, about growing old together. As the sun began to lower toward the horizon, they reluctantly mounted their horses to head home. But Walker pulled Deanna close before they rode out, looking into the gray eyes that had captivated him 2 decades ago. I love you, Deanna Preston, today, tomorrow, always. I love you too, Walker Preston, forever. They rode home side by side as they had done countless times before, partners in every sense of the word. Behind them, the sun painted the Wyoming sky in shades of gold and rose. Ahead, their home waited, full of life and love and the family they had built together. The years continued to unfold. Will married his sweetheart and began his own family, building a house on the far end of the ranch property. Emma eventually married as well, a teacher from Cheyenne, and they settled in town, though she visited the ranch frequently. Thomas went east to study veterinary medicine as he had planned, promising to return and practice in Wyoming. Walker and Deanna became grandparents, delighting in Will's children, watching the next generation begin to grow. They slowed down somewhat as age caught up with them, but they remained active and engaged with the ranch and with each other. On a summer evening in 1920, when Walker was 68 and Deanna 62, they sat together on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. Will was managing the ranch now, doing an excellent job. Their grandchildren were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. We have had a good life, Walker said, taking Deanna's hand. The best life, she agreed. Everything I could have wanted and more. No regrets. Not one, you. Only that it has gone by so fast. Deanna smiled and squeezed his hand. Then we will just have to make the most of whatever time we have left, together, always together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had built their life upon, surrounded by the family they had created, secure in the knowledge that what they had found in each other all those years ago at a town social had been real and lasting and true. One conversation had indeed led to a lifetime together, a lifetime of love and partnership and shared purpose. And it had been, in every way that mattered, perfect. The ranch continued to thrive under Will's management, incorporating new techniques and technologies while maintaining the core values Walker and Deanna had established. Thomas returned from his studies and set up a veterinary practice in Wheatland, becoming the go-to expert for all the ranchers in the area. Emma's children showed signs of inheriting her creative talents, always drawing and writing stories. Deanna took up painting in her later years, capturing scenes of ranch life and the Wyoming landscape. Her work was good enough that a gallery in Cheyenne offered to show it, and she had her first exhibition at age 65. Walker accompanied her to the opening, proud beyond words. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The party was held at the ranch, with half the county in attendance. There were speeches and toasts, laughter and tears. But the most meaningful moment came late in the evening when Walker and Deanna danced together under the stars, holding each other close, moving to music only they could hear. 40 years, Deanna whispered. Who would have thought that shy widow and that gruff rancher would end up here? I would have, Walker said firmly. I knew from that first conversation that you were the one. I knew we would build something extraordinary together. And we did. We really did. As they aged into their 70s and then 80s, Walker and Deanna remained devoted to each other. When Walker's health began to fail, Deanna cared for him with the same dedication she had brought to everything else in their life together. When Deanna had a fall that left her with a broken hip, Walker was there through every moment of her recovery. They died within 6 months of each other, both in their late 80s, both at home surrounded by family. Walker went first, peacefully in his sleep with Deanna holding his hand. She followed in the spring, and those who were with her said her last word was his name. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstones simple but eloquent. Walker's read, "Beloved husband, father, grandfather, he built a legacy of love." Deanna's read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she made a house a home." The rolling P continued under the stewardship of their descendants, generation after generation maintaining the ranch and honoring the foundation Walker and Deanna had built. The story of how they met the rancher who found her sitting alone at the town social, the one conversation that led to a lifetime together, became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren. It was a story of love found unexpectedly, of two people who had both known loss learning to hope again, of a partnership built on respect and affection and shared dreams. It was the story of a life well lived together. And for everyone who knew Walker and Deanna Preston, it was proof that sometimes, if you are very lucky and very brave, one conversation really can change everything. One moment of courage, one decision to sit down next to a stranger and strike up a conversation, can lead to a lifetime of love. That was their legacy. Not just the successful ranch or the family they raised, but the example they set of what marriage could be at its best. A true partnership, a deep and abiding love, a commitment to weather all storms together. The legacy lived on in their children, who had learned from their parents' example how to love and support their own partners. It lived on in their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, each carrying forward the values Walker and Deanna had instilled. It lived on in the very land itself, in the ranch that bore Walker's name but was built through Deanna's equal partnership. Years after both had passed, visitors to Wheatland would sometimes ask about the rolling P and the people who founded it. The stories told in response always began the same way. At a town social in 1884, when a rancher named Walker Preston found a woman named Deanna Sterling sitting alone on a bench and started a conversation that changed both their lives forever. It was, everyone agreed, the best kind of love story. The kind that was real and lasting. The kind that built something meaningful. The kind that reminded people what was possible when two hearts found each other at exactly the right moment. Walker and Deanna Preston had lived and loved and built a life together that spanned more than 6 decades. They had raised children, created a successful business, weathered hardships and celebrated triumphs, and through it all, they had remained each other's greatest supporters and dearest companions. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not the land or the cattle or the business success, though those were significant. What mattered was the love, the choice they had made to commit to each other, to work through challenges, to build something together that was greater than either could have created alone. One conversation at a town social had led to a lifetime together, and what a lifetime it had been. Full of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge, growth and change, but above all, full of love. The kind of love that endures, the kind of love that builds legacies, the kind of love that reminds us why we take the risk of opening our hearts in the first place. Walker and Deanna Preston's story was complete, their lives fully lived, their love story written from beginning to end. And it was, in every sense, a story with the happiest of endings. Not because everything was perfect, but because they had faced everything together and in doing so had created something truly perfect in its imperfection. Their love had been real. Their partnership had been true. And their legacy would endure for generations to come, carried forward by the family they had created and the example they had set. It was, simply put, a life well lived. Together. Always together. Just as they had promised each other on that wooden bench outside the town hall, on that warm spring night in Wheatland, Wyoming, so very long ago.